Writing is my favorite thing to do.
Have you heard about the Gateway to Publishing Conference and Convention? They'll have writing workshops, writing classes, and more. June 16th through 18th, 2017 at the Renaissance Airport Hotel in St. Louis, Missouri.
Cool! Where can I sign up?
Go right now to www.stlwritersguild.org and click on GatewayCon.
www.stlwritersguild.org and click on GatewayCon?
That's right. See you there.
Right Pack Radio, a podcast produced by Winding Trails Media, for writers, by writers.
Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack.
Welcome back to Right Back Radio. This is your host and producer, David Allen Lucas, author of Crazy Things and so forth. And this is the start of Season 4.
Yay!
Thank you for hanging around. With me today is my lovely co-host,
Kathleen Kayembe. I'm a writer of romance under the pen name Kiseka and Vita. And my short story, You Will Always Have Family, a triptych, is coming out in Nightmare Magazine. It's in March, so look for it.
yay. Also with us today is...
My name is Jennifer Stolzer. I'm a children's book author and illustrator. My premier self-published novel, Threadcaster, should be out. When's this airing?
This should be airing March 1st.
This month!
Yay!
There you go!
Hooray!
Yay!
Keep an eye out because there should be an announcement soon about a soft launch that's just on Amazon. If you don't live in the St. Louis area, participate in the soft launch. Because if you give me proof that you bought it the day it came out, I'll send you a prize package.
Ooh.
That proof should be sent in the form of a receipt or Amazon email proving that you bought the thing that does not include any of your pertinent information, but I do need your mailing address. Emailed to threadcaster@gmail.com. That's thread like string, caster like magic, Gmail like Gmail.
.com.
.com.
Like .com.
Like
.com.
It's all very, very simple.
And also with us,
My name is Chanel Etienne, and I write science fiction and fantasy.
Brad R. Cook, author of many, many, many things. If you've been listening to this for 4 seasons, then you've probably heard this before. I write steampunk, I write historical fantasy, I write for younger people, all because it's fun. Check out Iron Horseman, Iron Zulu, and Iron Lotus. They are in stores now, so do love them. And also, shout out to everyone at Webster Groves High School, because we were just there, and this was... probably had a great time there. And then also, if you're listening to this, do come to the March workshop for St. Louis Writers Guild. It's coming up here in like a day or two. I'm going to be talking about pitching and querying and all that kind of fun stuff. So if you are going to a conference this year and you have no idea what to do, come to the workshop. It's open. It's free to all. And you will know exactly what to do when you leave.
yeah, conferences like Missouri Writers Guild and Gateway Con. Also, what's this? Yeah, I can't talk.
At the wedding?
I'm Melanie Lucas, making me feel like I should really get to work so I can get something out, because I am nowhere close to that. Writer of science fiction and fantasy, and nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
Fedora Amos. I write Victorian whodunits like Jack the Ripper in St. Louis and Mayhem at Buffalo Bill's Wild West, which is a Spur nominee. I'm going to the Kansas City Convention of Western Writers.
Ooh,
and
nice.
that's apropos to today because we're going to talk about a famous Western writer.
Don't let the cat out of the bag yet.
Oh,
but,
okay.
They read the
also, too,
They clicked on the link.
yeah, also, too, yeah, Fedora is going to be presenting at St. Louis Writers Guild in May her famous, infamous Poisons Talk.
Oh, yes.
On May the 6th.
I love
May
So
the
don't
6th.
drink anything that day.
Yeah.
Well,
I do have stories I can tell, but anyway.
My favorite quote from the last time I heard you give the poison talk was the only way to get lead out of your body is to have a baby because it goes into their skeleton.
That's true.
See what you might miss. Next, also with us is...
My name is George Soroy. I am the Vice President of the Missouri Writers Guild. Looking forward to seeing you at the Holiday Inn Executive Center in Columbia, Missouri, May 5th through 7th for the annual Missouri Writers Guild Conference. I am also an author of science fiction for the young adult reader. And my entire collection is in the process of being re-released. That includes Excelsior, Ever Upward, Part 2 of the Excelsior Journey, and the 5-part serial from Parts Unknown. More information on that as we go.
And if you make it to this Missouri Writers Guild, or if you don't forget in June, on June 16th, 17th, and 18th in St. Louis, is going to be the Gateway to Publishing Convention and Readers Conference. So it's a Writers Conference. I'm sorry, I screwed that up. Writers Conference, Readers Convention.
Yep.
Okay, now that I screwed that up, let's get away from being screwed up here, and let's talk about one of my favorite Western writers, and who is Louis L'Amour, and creating larger-than-life characters. So who is Louis L'Amour? Who was Louis L'Amour? And what does he have to tell to us about writers? Well, I'll just start off with saying what he was able to do. I'll let other people talk about biography. But Louis L'Amour was one of those authors who most of us hate because they were able to put out 3 to 4 books a year. And actually, I'm slightly envious of that. That's actually my goal. Louis L'Amour wrote mostly Westerns. He did not just write Westerns. I know he wrote historical fiction. He also wrote mysteries. Looking over at Fedora and Brad being our historians. And
well, certainly his claim to fame is the Western.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And his is a really odd rags to riches kind of story, because during the Great Depression he was a bum, he was a hobo, keeping warm with newspapers under his clothes, and went on to become quite a very successful person in Hollywood. And he never really made nearly enough money from anything that he wrote. But he was the real successor, I think, to Zane Grey, whom we talked about recently. And he did absolutely a lot of the same things, and certainly wrote bigger-than-life characters. This is a book which is called Rider of the Lost Creek, which features Lance Kilkenny. And Lance Kilkenny is your typical bigger-than-life gunslinger kind of guy, and yet he has a code of honor. This story is, I suppose, a generation better, more complex at least, than the Zane Grey stories, because it has your typical 2 powerful guys who are at odds with each other, and one poor schmuck who's caught in the middle, and he has the water rights to a certain area, and both of the big guys are after him. So he calls upon Lance Kilkenny to come and bail him out. But we find a third wrinkle in it, that Royal Barnes is waiting for the 2 big guys to go against each other, and he's going to come in and clean everything up. And so the system of the story arc, has Lance Kilkenny come in and first establish his territory by fighting with people, because that's what he does in order to scare them, so that he won't have as many fights to deal with. And then, of course, he eventually figures out what's wrong and gets the 2 big guys together, and everything has a happy ending, except that he doesn't get the girl. He rides off into the sunset. Another trope, and I think one that he might have invented even.
Wouldn't that surprise me?
He probably invented a lot of the Western tropes.
Yes. So,
real quick, just to throw out the biography there. Louis Dearborn L'Amour was born March 22nd, 1908 in Jamestown, North Dakota. He would eventually pass away June 10th, 1988 in Los Angeles, California. And probably one of the most notable things about the man, John Wayne once said that he was the most interesting man in the world.
Oh.
So-
when you got John Wayne saying you're the most interesting man, that's probably pretty credible.
There you go, Deseki. You now have proof that your actor was not. Here
I
we
was
got the
gonna
real
say,
interesting
is
man.
that the inspiration for that guy? You have to
Shots
wonder.
fired.
Then again,
Wow.
he died
Being a
in
Western, all puns
1988,
intended, right?
so-
I know a little more about that story. It was relevant to a John Wayne movie, which was called Gift of Cochise. And John Wayne bought the rights to it in order to create a movie. And they changed the name to Hondo, which if you like westerns, or even if you don't, this is a cut way above a western that was created in 1953, because they pulled out all the stops. It was directed by John Farrow, who was Mia Farrow's dad, you know, and her entree into Hollywood.
Okay.
And it was done in 3D, which not very many movies were done in 3D in those days. And it had, of course, John Wayne, but usually they would have some young, cheap-working actress on the lot to be the love interest. No, they brought in Geraldine Page, a real actress from New York. And the story itself has a lot of interesting wrinkles in it. And you'd think, gee, John Wayne can't act? Well, actually, he can, and he does in this picture. And that is, I think, one of the reasons why he liked it, because it had dialogue that really worked for him. But it has a lot of interesting little bits and pieces. One of my favorite was the dog, a feral dog named Sam that would hang around with Hondo. And he wouldn't let his lady love feed the dog. I said, why not? It's your dog, isn't it? And he said, no, it's an independent dog. He makes his own way. But he stays with you, doesn't he? That's his choice. It is that kind of thing all over the place, and is really a pretty darn good Western movie. I recommend seeing Hondo.
So let's continue on with Louis L'Amour, and we know those of you who have never read Louis L'Amour, I'm going to recommend that you do. They are usually very fast reads, very easy reads. He wrote entire family sagas. But what I'm going to say is how to create. Okay, Brett, you got your finger up already. Do you know where I'm going, or you got something?
No, I was just going to throw out more bio.
Okay, more bio. Then I'm going to bring up the question of how do we go about creating larger-than-life characters, or where are they? Go ahead.
I was going to throw out, so at the time of his death, almost all of his 105 existing works, 89 novels and 14 short story collections, and 2 full-length works of nonfiction were still in print, and many of them had been made into movies. He is considered to be one of the most popular writers, and it should be noted that he did not actually consider himself a Western writer. He considered himself to write frontier stories. Stories about frontier men and frontier, life and everything like that.
Just to prove to you that semantics has been a thing since the dawn of time.
Apparently.
And also, too, if I remember right, he picked up a lot of his storytelling from around the campfire. He was born in the end of what we consider to be the real Old West time period.
North Dakota, 1908. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
You're still in the West.
So he actually got to talk to the real cowboys beforehand. Go ahead.
He sounds pretty prolific. Do we know anything about his process? How he wrote so many
Yes.
novels and short stories and collections?
Well, there is a saying that he has a formula. Well, you should say that. And according to this, he wrote 101 books. More than 30 of his novels were sold into stories, blah, 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 182 million copies. And by the way, I know they're still out there. He had, for his plot outline, 10 things. 1, and yes, I'm sorry, remember the time period he wrote, females were not normally generally heroes in a story, so it's the male hero. Transfer that to female, it doesn't matter. The male hero tells us of his birth, family, as Dickens or David Copperfield does. Dickens or David Copperfield does. It is generally a sad story producing an itinerant loner boy. Itinerant. Thank you. Yeah.
Internet loner boy is also a broad
Internet Loner Boy sounds like the beginning of an escort romance story. Just saying.
That would show just how far ahead of his time he was.
Write it down. I want this.
Going back, he falls in. Thank you, everybody. Love you too. He falls in love. I'm sorry. I'm also fighting my lovely throat.
Hey,
He
it is
falls in love
romance.
a few times through a novel. beautiful girls only, but he always moves on. Reasons given being that he is on a mission. Number 2, bad guys show up early in the story doing horrific things to our hero's people. These lowlifes have greed of the worst sort and criminal motives for violence, killing, attacking, stealing, or roughing nice folks up, and generally a general societal menace. The villain continuing to do this to other people than our hero and his family, and must be stopped for the welfare of humanity. 3. Our hero is on a holy mission, out for justice, as opposed to simple revenge, which means finding and catching this brigand or gang, and doing so is not murder. It is for the good of other people. Number 4, our hero proves himself to be a true man by frequently rescuing other innocents in mortal situations, always at the peril of his own life. Number 5, our hero is taught in very dangerous, precarious Our hero is caught in very dangerous, precarious physical environments, maybe on a mountaintop with temps as low as 20 below. He has survival methods that are true to the period and in themselves fascinating. He digs a hole in the snow, lines it with boughs, builds a reflector for fire, blah, blah, blah. He carries flint, coffee pot, coffee beans, bullets. He hunts game. He's a regular foxfire. Number 6, there's a first-person narrative where the hero ponders the great light bulbs of life. He is a philosopher, repeatedly doing a bit in every chapter. Number 7, there is a lot of chest-thumping, manly liturgy displayed for the benefit of young boy readers. The author gives the rules of being a man. Number 8. I know you get. I got some. I got people think.
The ladies in the audience are twisting themselves into pretzels over there.
Well, this is remember time period. That's all I'm gonna say.
No, we haven't forgotten.
No, we haven't.
Lamore also picks an historic and fairly precise time. He will read everything he can on the period, history, and incorporate these details. And by the way, that pause is because somebody put a comma there. So,
You're just obeying the.
I'm obeying the grammar rules.
Obeying the grammar rules.
Accurate descriptions of, okay, this is their term, not mine, Indian tribes.
We know you're reading.
Customs, genuine geological areas, fauna, in specific sites across the American West.
Namely, he did his research.
And number 10, useful survival tech of outdoor travelers in this period or any. So that was his formula.
That's quite
That's
a
not
formula.
a formula.
That is
Yeah.
It's an instructional book.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's just called writing a book.
He wrote a book about writing a book.
And what's hilarious, before it turns over, the website that I read that from is called www.luckinlove.com/lamore.htm. The title was Have a Guaranteed Successful Bestseller Using Louis L'Amour's Formula.
And by the way, if you do that today, I think some of those are cliched now.
Yeah, they are.
They weren't when he did it, because he made the cliches.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Go for it.
Again, remember the time period.
I was going to say a number of things that I'm not going to say because like I'm getting story ideas from some of the things, not that you were reading, but that sounds legit like an escort site. And I write erotica and romance. But anyway,
The owner of that site, I apologize for her. Go ahead.
the list of
Maybe you shouldn't. They might enjoy what you make.
that list reminds me a lot of reading the Vampire Hunter D novels that were translated.
Vampire
Vampire
Hunter,
Hunter.
talk about writing to a formula.
Yes.
Every single one of those novels was exactly the same.
Yes,
Oh, good
literally
stuff.
the location changed, but all the other beats happened right at the same time, right in the same way, not necessarily things you wanted to see ever again, but they were there for you. Because that's how they roll. It was a really interesting way of reading a series because I'm used to series that grow and change and the situations are very different and authors try and vary things. So reading one that was so formulaic and that was popular for that reason was fascinating to me. So now I'm curious about Mr. Lamore's works and, how he's managed to vary it up enough.
Well,
that it doesn't sound like the same
Cowboy
story.
is riding along. Cowboy does, gets unwronged. Cowboy meets girl who's been wronged. Cowboy then goes and stops bad guys who are doing wrong. There's a lot of bullets that fly. There might be a kiss, and then Cowboy rides off, and that's every Louis L'Amour novel that,
Pretty much, yeah.
So he did write Vampire Hunter too.
Go ahead, Vicky.
Well, there are a lot of very moralistic kinds of themes that he has. One of the ones that's most prominent, as far as I can tell, is family. The Sackets was his, and it made a really rotten mini-series on television a number of years ago. Oh, yeah, it was pretty bad.
I have it.
I have it. I'm sorry.
Anyway,
I inherited it, but go ahead.
But the brothers are not a lot like each other, but they'll go to the wall for each other no matter what. So it's a very moralistic kind of universe that he presents. Most specifically, a lot of the stories, well, all of them actually start right after the Civil War and continue that kind of thing as there's conflict, which doesn't end just because the war does. And he mined that for a lot of information.
I think he did have a couple that occurred before Civil War, after the War of 1812. I could be wrong. I might be thinking of another one. But the vast majority, like 90% of his westerns, definitely fall where she was talking about. Go ahead.
So I am noticing something Fedora said earlier about his characters being larger than life. So we have cowboys that are often larger than life. When you were reading that list, I also got flashes of the Magnificent Seven film, the newest one, which is down to everything but the romance, which I was very pleased didn't happen. Because
not that Chris Pratt's character didn't attempt a couple of times.
No, but I mean, it wouldn't have made sense for a character who was freshly widowed to immediately, it just would have been weird.
Yeah. It would have affected the portrayal of women in
yes.
the movie.
Yes.
But like all those cowboys were pretty larger than life, and that's based on Seven Samurai, and those samurai were pretty much larger than life. So what makes a character larger than life?
Hey, that was my question too.
Well, as for L'Amour, he also made his Indians larger than life.
Yes.
Vittorio, which is not a very Indian kind of name, but he's supposed to be an Apache chief, in Hondo is a much larger than life and much different than the typical stereotype, which is, I think, what the larger in life comes in, that he is not what he's supposed to be or what his stereotype is. This Vittorio is a person with a lot of courage, of course, and he is able to command this wild bunch of people, but he has definite standards of honor, and he respects women, and
so what makes him larger than life?
What makes him larger, because he is the opposite of what he is expected to be, at least at the time. He is the opposite of a stereotype.
So he's sort of like an ideal. Being an exemplar makes you larger than life.
And because he has this huge number of followers that you wouldn't expect him to have necessarily. Or this great, deep respect. Respect and followers, I think, together make a larger than life character.
So do they have to be like a hero then?
No, you can
be larger than life. Yeah.
No, being larger than life means that you're verbose. You are, you're out there. You are larger than yourself. You are not contained within your own vessel. Your influence, your whatever is felt well beyond you. Your words travel further. That kind of stuff. So when we talk about something being larger than life, what we're really talking about is something that is greater than the mundane.
Mm-hmm.
Moriarty and Lex Luthor are larger than life too.
Right.
You can
get a real example. Of
you can also get plenty of examples of larger than life characters from professional wrestling, because you take a look at at the man himself, Dwayne Johnson, who looks like he's larger than life and everything based on just his appearance and everything.
You can be
but
physically larger.
Yeah, but he comes off as very very charming, very down to earth and everything. But as soon as he steps in the ring and becomes The Rock, who really is, like, it's elements of his personality that he himself took to, you know, like as he would say, as Nigel Tufnell would say, dialed up to 11. And, you know, like, that's basically, like, what, you know, what those characters are. Like, they exist primarily within that particular world and make sense, like, within that world. But, you know, like, as regular people, like, looking at them, yes, they would be larger than life.
But I was thinking one of the ideals of cowboys is that they're humble. So can someone be self-effacing and still be larger than life? And how would the self-effacing version of larger than life?
Well, the self-effacing part, I would think, like, that would be the element to humanize them, to try to, like, appeal more to the reader or the viewer or
so
the,
that
you know,
wouldn't be a
the
part
audience.
of making themselves.
Right, that would be like a part to kind of humanize them, while everything else around them would be larger than life. That would be like the connectivity, in a sense.
I disagree on that. I think the idea of, well, I'll coin a phrase I don't know who said, but everyone knows, is that there's no such thing as altruism. You can't be truly altruistic. Everything you do is either to make, you know, you might be doing it for the goodness of your heart to help other people, but that's just it. It makes your heart feel good. So that's an argument, is that there's no such thing as pure altruism. Heroes tend to portray true altruism. I'm going to give an example of a larger-than-life hero character.
Okay.
Master Chief from the Halo series. Not only is he engineered to be a bigger, stronger, tougher dude, his character as it's written, and a thing I really love about him as a larger-than-life hero, is that he considers himself an instrument of war, and he seeks no glory for himself ever.
Right.
He's just there to do a job because he pretty much just is a hammer, and he is striking any nail that needs to be hit. And when his friends die in service to war, he sits there and goes, "Why am I having feelings? I'm only a weapon." But he doesn't have like a horrible, you know, philosophical moment about it. It's just that he sort of slowly and quietly accepts the fact that he's not allowed to have friends because he's just a hammer. And that's the humanizing element. But the altruism element, the I am not here to receive the glory element, that's what makes him a larger-than-life hero, is because everyone's trying to celebrate him. And for the beginning of the second game, they're having an award ceremony where they're giving him a medal, and he arrives in his power armor, and they're like, "You're supposed to wear something nice," and he says, because he didn't care about the medal. He didn't want the medal. He was just told to be here, and he follows orders because he's a soldier. And everyone kind of like, "Oh, Chief, huck yuck," because why would we expect that we would celebrate you and that you would enjoy being celebrated? You don't think anything of yourself. You're just here for us. What a good guy you are. And then, of course, aliens attack and he has to shoot a bunch of people.
And he's in his power armor.
And he's already in his power armor, so it works out. Although he does have to turn to a guy and say, "Give me a weapon," which is a good line.
Let me use a couple of... We know a lot of larger-than-life characters in things we read, things we watch. I'm going to toss out a real human being who was larger than life. Winston Churchill. Think about it. And he became the hope of Britain, actually of pretty much free world at that point in time, in the middle of the darkest times that England was facing against Nazi Germany. They were waiting for invasion any time, and pretty much should have been invaded. You know, there's no real reason why they successfully fought it off, except for being encouraged. Russia. And the bravery of those fighters.
You sound so hurt. Russia!
I don't. But Hitler wouldn't have invaded Russia. If he hadn't invaded Russia, he would have just rolled right over Britain.
Exactly.
Yeah, the whole Eastern Front saved not only Britain's entire existence, but the entirety of the war.
Actually,
and we had something to do with it too.
No, this is all before we got involved. It would have basically been Fortress Europe, and then we would have had to basically try and claw our way on. Probably would have lost twice as many troops on D-Day or worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those weird little moments of history where Hitler was really stupid, and that helped the world kick his butt. And it's a wonderful thing. Thank you, Hitler, for being dumb.
Yes. I saw a good video about that on crack.com that pointed out that it wasn't like he actually planned his timing well, because there's the whole thing, don't attack Russia in winter. He attacked in June. He didn't attack in winter. He attacked between the mud seasons.
Right.
But he didn't realize how long it would take.
Yeah.
And also, he only brought cars with tires, so he got stuck in the mud when the mud happened.
Yeah.
Okay, but what I was going to go back to, Hitler turned to east while he's in the middle of attacking Britain, which is stupid. But what I'm saying is, the constant bombardment, the entire Battle of Britain, Winston Churchill's inspiration to the Brits is what helped win the Battle of Britain.
Oh, heck yeah.
And of course, what's scary about the winning of the Battle of Britain, the sign of victory was when Germany started bombing London. That's one hell of a way to win. But still, going back to creating bigger, larger-than-life characters. Personal thought is, I think that one of the ways to do it is also make a larger-than-life villain to your hero, or vice versa, who is at least equally strong. Batman, larger than life. Joker, larger than life. I can do that with love.
Superman, Lex Luthor. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of typical, but that's also about a balance of power. If you have a really powerful bad guy and you don't have someone to counteract him, that's a problem.
Right.
The Avengers gets away with it now in a new way, in that they're bringing in a team who equals then Ultron.
Right.
You know, so they have a super powerful bad guy that's more bigger than any one person can take. Well, okay, we all get together and we kick his butt. So. These are classic themes. I don't know if it's necessarily... I mean, it is larger-than-life characters. You're completely right there. But I think in that terms, it's about storytelling, balancing power.
We have a god. Well, we have a Hulk. Go ahead.
How do you say Donald Maass's name?
Moss.
Moss.
All right, so I'm going to throw a wrench in this because that's what I do
A
for fun.
moss-shaped wrench?
Yes. A massive wrench.
Oh!
I like it.
Donald, I did not do it. If you ever decided, did you listen to the show and you want to represent me? No. I did not do that. Go
I might
ahead.
like that.
I'm looking through his... I was looking through his book, Writing the Breakout Novel Workbook, before this episode, and he has a chapter on writing larger-than-life characters. And his conclusion in this chapter is, a larger-than-life character is one who says, does, and thinks things that we would like to, but never dare. This does not mean necessarily turning your characters into wisecrackers or pulp cliches. It does mean pushing them out of their own bounds, whatever those might be. And the exercise that he gives for making larger-than-life characters is write down the following. What is the one thing your protagonist would never, ever say? What is the one thing that your protagonist would never, ever do? What is the one thing your protagonist would never, ever think? And then, find places in your story in which your protagonist must say, do, and think those very things.
Exactly.
Can I borrow that book?
It gives me very much joy.
Actually,
we'll
I was
talk after
serious
the
about
episode.
that. Yeah.
We'll talk after the episode.
Great.
But yeah, it says, for example, winking at a stranger is easy for a flirt, but to a shy person it's huge. So basically taking a person out of their comfort zone. So what do you guys think of that?
I completely agree.
Well, why do you agree? Let's go ahead.
Yeah.
No, seriously. Like,
No, I know.
yeah, exactly. I mean, what he's talking about is exactly what we need to do. You need, and the reason why he's throwing it out there is because he's trying to get you to think. You know, we all have the character in our head. We all know what they're going to be. We all know what Batman's going to say to the Joker. We all know what Superman's going to say to Lex Luthor. We know that in our heads. But the minute you flip that is when that becomes the really good story. You know,
If you do it well.
if you do it well.
If you don't do it well, it'll feel out of character.
It might feel out of character, but
Case in
that's
point,
also
Teen
where you
Man
get that
still.
growth, because now that character's gone into the parts of himself that he can't necessarily deal with or have dealt with or anything like that, and that's where you get the exciting parts of a novel, because a novel shouldn't be the everyday, mundane, daily life. The novel should be the greatest day of this character's life or the worst day of this character's life.
Or both.
Or both.
I think Lee Lamore also presents something. That's why I'm taking the reins for a second. Pun intended. I'm only quoting part of something he wrote here. Up to a point, a person's life is shaped by the environment, heredity, and changes in the world about him. Then there comes a time when it lies within their grasp to shape the clay of their life into a sort of thing they wish to be. And I think that's also falling into that type of character.
To play off a little bit on what Brad was talking about before, And also what Kathleen was saying regarding the things that your character would never say or would never do when it comes to the balance between Batman and the Joker. The Joker wants Batman to kill him. That's the primary thing. Like, that's the one thing that Batman will not do is kill. And and Batman and Joker basically just says, like, well, that's the rule you'll have to break. Like in The Dark Knight, that's the rule you'll have to break to know the truth. Basically, what he is trying to do, which is a really wonderful part of why that movie works so well, is because it kind of takes that element and almost turns it on its head, because Batman will not, no matter what, he will not kill someone. But at the same time, like, instead of that thing where he has to kill in order to succeed in this mission, he has to go to the brink to not kill. Which makes it really, really interesting, the way that element is played with in that movie.
Ramping up your stakes.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, some of the best Batman stories of all time are that exact storyline. The Joker pushing Batman to the point where he has to kill the Joker.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that you have a very good point, and I'm ready to counteract and contradict Moss anytime. Because what you described was a person who goes against his moral structure, and I don't think that makes for a larger-than-life character at all. It makes for an interesting character and an interesting story. Great. But to say that it makes him larger than life, I don't think so.
You think that brings him into life? Or perhaps brings him to life?
It makes it a very interesting character. I agree.
It makes a compelling, strong character to...
Yes.
Right.
Which does not make him larger than life.
So, like, for me, being afraid of heights, like, the one thing that I will never do is go bungee jumping. So it's just like, if I find that in me to go ahead and do that at one point, does that make me larger than life?
If you were writing your life, you'd make yourself go bungee jumping.
Yeah.
No, but you'd have to have a strong purpose behind it.
Oh, yeah.
You'd have to have somebody to save.
Like I would.
That's what makes you larger.
Like my
than
wife
life,
would be
not the
like,
fact that
down in the
jump
water or
down a
something, and I would have to. Yeah.
You have to time this perfectly, George.
Right.
Jump off this bridge to catch your wife as she floats by. Oh no.
Mission Impossible music starts playing.
Make sure not to brain her on the way down, though, with her own skull.
Go ahead.
If you still want to.
If you write a foul that, go for it.
I'm not scared of that. Bring it. Anyway, I was kind of surprised when I read his conclusion about larger-than-life characters, because I was thinking, archetypal heroic type people, or like archetypal evil type people. Like, I was thinking Superman, and I was also thinking like Captain Malcolm Reynolds from Firefly.
Yes.
Like, those characters seem larger than life to me in a way that I don't know, say Alice from The Magicians is not larger than life to me. She's smart, but she's not larger than life. She's not huge. She's not super heroic, like superhuman in some way that makes her outstanding in a way that most ordinary people can't be. I thought larger than life means an ordinary character cannot be that kind of person.
Well, I think an ordinary character can be larger than life, but what other people are saying about, I'm not sure. I want to read that chapter about Moss's larger than life characters, but I'm not sure if I agree with his definition of what larger than life means.
See,
yeah.
When I read his chapter, he used Stephanie Plum, I believe, from
I would say she's larger than life.
And the example he gives of her being, like, showing us initially in the first book, which I haven't read, so that's why I'm looking at Fedora very closely, because I assume you're more familiar with him than I am. In the first book, Stephanie Plum sees an ex who de-virginized her when she was a teen on the sidewalk.
Joe Morelli. Yeah.
She is in her car.
Does she run him over?
She gets up onto the sidewalk in that car and knocks him straight down. And she gets out of the car and she's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "No." And she's like, "Good." Gets back in her car and drives off.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
She should have thrown it in reverse and done it again.
Well, see, and that's exactly what Moss was saying about doing something, a character doing something you would never do. And that being something that can make them larger than life. The Fried Green Tomatoes movie, where You know, the young girl pulls into the parking lot, and then she just slams into her, and is like, you know,
Slams
honey,
into the
I'm
car,
more
not the-
insured.
not
Yeah,
the
I'm
other
older
girl.
and I'm more insured. You know, that makes her a larger than life character because now it's taking over that superhero role, but it's not
wish
saving-
fulfillment.
Yeah, it's wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
But it's that superhero in the sense of like now they can do something that the ordinary person couldn't or wouldn't do. And that's when you become larger than life.
do, not couldn't do.
Yeah.
I think that larger than life has a big element of risk in it.
Yes.
Look at the movie Norma Ray, if you
Yep.
can go back that
Yep,
far. She is an ordinary person, but then she gets involved with the union and she becomes the spokesperson for the union and risks everything, her job, her family, you name it. So I think there's an important element of risk
And now I feel
involved
like
in
you
making
stand on a table
someone
or something.
bigger than life.
So, I'm thinking of Medea from the Tyler Perry films and plays.
Why?
And, funny you should
life,
ask
wow.
that.
There.
She is literally physically larger than life.
Yeah.
She is literally, as a personality, larger than life.
Yes, my goodness.
And a lot of Tyler Perry's films recently are Medea's whatever.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of other characters. It's always an ensemble cast piece. So there are a lot of main characters. Medea may not even be the main character, but the film still has a lot of focus on her. She is the larger than life character in that film. So is it like, if you have a character like that, do they necessarily need to be the main character? Does your main character always need to be larger than life? Or can you have ordinary people that just do things that, you know, go against their principles sometimes?
I just thought of an example. Like, if you remember Bewitched from Nick at Night. Okay, yes, I know it didn't originally come on Nick at Night, but that's when everyone in this audience probably saw it. Probably. Point is, the character that I would see as larger than life wasn't one of the Darren or Samantha. It was Endora, the mother-in-law.
Oh, yes.
She was the larger than life character, and she certainly wasn't the main character.
Brad and then Jen. Or Jen. and Ben.
So I've actually been fascinated by this example. I was actually just talking to you about it last night. To David here about it last night. Anyway, if you take, so I'm going to start off with Mr. Megorium's Magic Emporium,
Oh, I took a
which if you haven't seen it is a wonderful movie. I highly recommend it. Dustin Hoffman and Natalie Portman. But I'm also going to throw in then Gatsby, and the reason why is because these are the exact same stories. They both star in the title over the bigger than life characters who are bigger than anything else. Mr. Megorium, Gatsby. You know, these larger than life characters who do fascinating things and are amazing things, and technically the story is about them. But that's not the person who's telling us the story. The person who's telling us the story is the little boy in Magic Emporium, or it's, you know, the Nick character in Gatsby. And, you know, we have these side characters who are actually the main characters of the story. They're the ones who are interacting with this world. And what they give us is the common man's view of this over the top character that's before them. And so we get to see their grandeur through, you know, this other character's eyes. It's a fascinating way of telling a story, but it's yet another way then of having not your main character be the character who's bigger than life.
Jen and then.
I'm glad you mentioned Gatsby because I was going to talk about Gatsby. I was going to specifically talk about Nick and how Gatsby's larger than life status as the story itself is given that scope because it's being told from the point of view of pretty much the audience. You know,
Exactly.
Nick's telling the audience what the average person comes in and sees Gatsby, and now Gatsby as a character is both sort of the hero and the villain. Because he's his own downfall in the end. You know, his inability to let go of Daisy and all the shenanigans that happen. Like, he's putting on this great big show, but that's not who he really is, but it is who he is. And that story would not have been told as well from Gatsby's point of view. From Gatsby's point of view, it would have narrowed the scope down because we have to put it in human terms.
Yep.
And when we're looking at it through Nick's point of view, we're seeing it through human terms and we're allowed to witness it as being larger than life. being more than we will experience. Gatsby's highs are higher than we could reach, and his lows are so tragic and deep. And it's because Nick's highs and lows are on a narrower scope. So therefore, us, the audience, our highs and lows are on a narrower scope. And that's what makes Gatsby larger than life. And another character perhaps even doing the exact same things as Gatsby, not larger than life, quote unquote, because the story is either being told from his point of view or he is being placed in a story with a scope large enough to fit him.
Yeah, it's a fascinating storytelling technique.
There's also Brad. As soon as you were talking about like a character, like a larger than life character being told from other people's point of view, immediately what popped into my head was the Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because in that sense you have the twist like much later on. That this large spoiler alert.
If you haven't seen, read, or done anything with Wizard of Oz,
If you haven't been conscious in media for the last couple of
please see
decades.
your doctor.
Frank Ball is upset with you.
We get the sudden twist of the look at the man behind the curtain, and so but at the same time, we've had this image of this larger than life character pretty much from almost the beginning, from the first mention of the wizard, all the way through the story. So that's also something to keep an eye on, and also just to throw out, just to respond to Kathleen about Medea. Thank God that she became like so much of the focus of a Medea Halloween, because if I had to deal with any of the characters around, other than Medea and her inner circle and everything, it would have been the most dreadful hour and a half I would have had to spend in the theater.
I haven't seen that movie yet. No spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers.
A Medea
No spoilers.
Halloween. Here's your spoiler, okay? There's like an entire scene where they just stand around in the living room and talk.
But that is one of the most entertaining parts of the movie.
It's the entertaining part because it's all Tyler Perry.
Yes.
He's talking to himself the whole time.
I will say, talking about something very much in the same thing of Wizard of Oz, the larger life character in a play called Waiting for Godot.
Yes.
Yes.
Guess what? Godot never shows up.
Yep.
Spoilers. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
No, I've read it.
Okay, so this is actually kind of making me challenge the way I used to think about larger than life characters, because the way that I originally came into this thinking about it was, okay, you take a character, you take X trait of said character, and you dial it up to 1,000, and that makes them instantly this character that is so not unrelatable necessarily, but so beyond what we could even fathom on a day-to-day basis, that they are inherently larger than life. So I'm still trying to consolidate that with what you guys are actually spitting at me.
That's the cheaper, not cheaper, I think that's one way to make a larger than life character, but that's only one way.
Yeah, of course.
See, that's the kind of thing I was thinking I was going to read when I picked up the Donald Moss book. Well, no, Moss. Okay. The Donald
book.
Donald
Let's
Moss
go
book.
there.
No, it's not.
It makes it sound like it's written by a duck.
No,
it's
okay.
just-
No, it's not
it's
written by a
just-
duck.
I have to get the repetition in, Donald
That's-
Moss,
that's
because
fine.
I've said it 3 different ways, no joke, for years now. So I have to train myself out of those.
Okay.
Donald Moss.
Were you done talking? Like you're in the middle of an idea, I think.
Well, I had expected it to be, you take a character, you give them a trait, you dial it up to 1,000. And one of the things that draws me to Batman is that he is larger than life, but it's not necessarily because he, might have to kill the Joker, is because he's a human being with no superpowers who fights superpowered beings dressed as a giant bat. Like, who does that? Who seriously is like,
A crazy
I'm
person.
still damaged by what happened to my parents. I want to make sure nobody goes through that situation again. Not through legislation, not through legal means, but by beating the crap out of bad guys as I roam the streets at night. But I don't want anyone to know.
In my cape, though.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pretend I'm a playboy and that I like it and I'm not dying inside. Okay.
Well, I might not have a quote perfectly, but to borrow from the Dark Knight, from the Dark Knight, So your idea is to blackmail a man who goes out and beats up mobsters with his bare hands. Good luck with that.
The thing is, though, I've often heard Batman is his identity. Bruce Wayne is his alter ego.
Oh, yeah.
That's his mask.
And
yeah.
that's very much something that I believe about Batman.
One of my favorite lines in all of Batman is there's an episode of Batman Beyond where Batman is getting someone's in his head and telling him things, and he's making him think he's crazy. And the reason he knows he's not crazy is because I don't call myself Bruce. I call myself Batman.
Okay.
He never
So,
actually
like-
says that, but it's heavily
Yeah.
implied.
So the thing is, I'm wondering, is there a difference between having a character who is externally larger than life and someone who is internally larger than life? Like, the Moss example was you take a character and you make them do something that is beyond their limits. But like with
See, I don't think it
Batman,
needs to be in a
with
character
Batman,
who knows his limits.
No, but it's yet another way of doing it, though.
Yeah.
I will eventually say a full thought, people.
No.
You're right. Somebody else talk. I'm not allowed.
Go for it, Jen.
Well, I'm going to give it back to Kathleen again because
Good.
she still hasn't finished her idea.
Yay!
You're wonderful and I
That's
love you. So, is there a difference between being larger than life externally and larger than life internally? Like, and do you need to have someone who's externally larger than life if they're pushing past their own limits?
I'm going to respond to that because what I was going to say earlier is still applicable. So okay, good. It was sort of responding to Chanel. Chanel's talking about how she defined larger than life before we started talking about it here in the circle. I always kind of define larger than life as I am life, and is it bigger than me and what I feel like I could accomplish and I could do, and also the influence around the outside of the character. Sometimes the larger than life element is the reputation said character has in their world, and then the humanizing element of that character is who they are when they're inside, you know. The difference, I think, between an externally larger than life person and an internally larger than life person is just that. Is their reputation what is the big part? Is how they're known by everyone else the part that has elevated their character past a human, the author level, like the reader level? Or is it who they are when they close doors that makes them larger than life? Is what's going on inside their heads and inside their souls something that we're aspiring to rise to, something that we're looking at and seeing it as greater than ourselves, as bigger than what we think we can accomplish or what we feel we can accomplish in our own lives? That would be an internally larger than life person versus the externally larger than life person who is able to kick major ass or has a particular set of skills, or can manipulate a courtroom in a way that we wish we were that clever. That's sort of an outward persona that is larger than life, and we're awed by it, as we should be, because that's how they're written. Versus someone who is perhaps getting their larger than life element from how we watch their personalities change or the decisions they make. Not to bring this back to Babylon 5, because I always bring this back to Babylon 5.
I was waiting.
You're waiting! Oh no, I should probably stop then. Everyone already knows what I'm going to say.
No, we just
Oh,
think about Babylon 5.
There are both of those characters in Babylon 5. And they correspond with the two main stories of Babylon 5. The one, I'm going to call it the A story, even though I think they both carry as much weight. The A story is the war Dark vs. Light story, which has John Sheridan as the arguable main character. I'd say it was Delenn, but people would fight with me, so we're going to go with John. John is the lead character of the A story, and he is the outwardly larger-than-life person. He's the one who's standing up in front of whole armies and saying, "Get behind me," which is what Delenn said.
Yeah.
Or, fight with me or fight against me.
Which is what Delenn said.
Which is what Delenn said.
Delenn's a woman,
I'm making
she
my
can't be in
point here.
charge.
But that story is very much a broad universe conflict thing. The B story of Babylon 5 is Londo and Jakar, and Londo and Jakar and Veer. And it's this very personal story of how do you wrestle with your own conscience and changing the way you see your enemies and becoming friends with them, or recognizing yourself as being an enemy and having to make an internal change. Londo's story, there's a very good reason why Londo's the only one we spend an entire episode actually inside his psyche. Having him actually talk to himself so we can see for absolute certain how he feels and how he thinks, because his story is nearly entirely an internal one. His actions have a lot to do with the A story, have a lot to do with the war and lots of politics and killing people and blowing stuff up, blowing your own people up, blowing your enemies up. But his story, the thing that has the arc, the thing that changes, is him, and that's why he's my favorite character. I love the A story. I love all the characters involved in the A story. They all have their own arcs, they all have their own personal stuff, but the main narrative they're part of is a larger-than-life external story. And the main narrative that Londo and Jakar are a part of is a very internal, larger-than-life story. Because I get into seeing him make the worst decision he possibly can, and then make the hardest decision he can, which is to change fundamentally who he is on the inside. Mic drop.
Okay. Were you gonna go into a related area? Okay.
No one else wants to talk about Londo with me?
Spoilers! Actually, there is a follow-up on that. If you want to talk about
No
Londo.
spoilers.
No spoilers.
No, I just think it's really interesting because the more I'm hearing about these larger-than-life characters and internal larger-than-life versus external larger-than-life, this is taking a very interesting trip into the land of psychosis for me. Just because the things that we would consider like larger-than-life in a character and completely wonderful in a character, larger-than-life character, would make them so dysfunctional as an actual functioning person.
Yes, it would.
And just in terms of, I don't call myself Bruce. I call myself Batman. Dude, do you know what that sounds like?
It sounds like a dissociative personality disorder.
Exactly. And I'm like, you're talking about all this grandiosity. I'm like, that sounds like Hallmark bipolar to me. But you know,
It
I'm
really
just,
does, yes.
and so I'm just like, okay, so if I just make my characters, like, okay, I'm just like trying to make this down to the itty bitty baby steps for characters. I'm like, if I give my character a psychosis without actually giving them psychosis, they turn out as a larger than life character. I think that sounds about right.
No,
I wouldn't go, yeah.
I'm kidding, but it just interests me because
if you want to take that as a possible strategy, then go ahead.
I might go for this, but it's just interesting because, like I said, what works in terms of making these characters so great is something that would actually probably break someone's life apart in real life.
Okay, I don't normally do this, but we do have 4 minutes left, so.
What I wanted to say was this idea of internal, larger than life is kind of strange. The only character that I can think of that really fits the bill is Walter Mitty. So I think this is probably a pretty good way for humor, but as far as showing a character that's larger than life, I think it's more external than it is internal.
Okay. Kathleen and then George, or George and Kathleen, whichever you guys want.
Kathleen, you go first.
Well, I'm gonna change it up a little bit. Did you want to?
There was one thing that I wanted to chime in with that would also change it up a little bit, but you can.
Shoot for it.
Do certain types of stories lend themselves better to larger than life characters, like superhero stories or
Westerns.
Westerns.
Space Westerns.
Bringing it back.
Space Westerns.
Obviously some
Yeah.
do, but I think even your, like, you know, standard rom-com can have larger-than-life characters,
Yeah.
usually played by Stanley Tucci. You know, so, you know...
Almost definitely. In a lot of the romantic comedies that are specifically written for female audiences, the male love interest is larger than life because he's like this perfect, unattainable thing.
Mr. Big.
Yeah.
Mr. Big.
Oh yeah.
I mean, obviously not all of them are like that. I just watched another cracked video talking about how every character in a rom-com is actually the villain. But that's
There are rom-coms where that is true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that working.
I love breaking down rom-coms. They're fun.
just to kind of touch on another element of larger than life, and also to get back to Louis L'Amour. This is also from his bio. This is something that I really have to thank Louis L'Amour for doing as a lover of audio works, because one of the things that they put on here was when the fledgling Bantam Audio Publishing, now Random House Audio, came to L'Amour about converting some of his old short stories into audio, he insisted that they do something to offer the audience more value than just having an actor read a bunch of old pulp stories. And together, he and Bantam executive Jenny Frost created the concept of a series of radio drama-style productions that would combine a large cast of actors, sound effects, and music to produce a modern audio drama of each story. Now, if you have listened to any of the Star Wars audiobooks, you know exactly what that's all about, because they use all of the Lucas archives at their disposal. So you got John Williams music, you have Ben Burt sound effects, and I also want to give a big thank you to L'Amour for doing this, because I heard the unabridged production of The Godfather, Mario Puzo's The Godfather, and it's done exactly like this, with music, with sound effects, and with a very large cast of actors that were doing all the different roles, including an okay Vito Corleone.
I was going to say real fast, and he's also, because he did that, kind of sort of inspiration behind what I'm trying to do on Winding Trails. So, okay.
Plug for Winding Trails.
I have more of a last thought kind of thing.
Okay.
All right. So I was going to say it sounds like we have a few different ways of interpreting larger-than-life characters, and we also have a few different ways of creating them in your stories. And those seem to me to be have your character, force your character to go beyond their limits, beyond what they think they would ever say or do or think about something, put them in a situation where they have to cross those boundaries and grow or break, depending on what those boundaries are. And the other way of creating a larger-than-life character is to take an aspect of that character and, like, turn it up to 100, as Miss Chanel said. Start with your character and then, I don't know, turn them into a person who dresses up as a bat at night and studies martial arts and has no superpowers but scares the crap out of people who do.
Brad, and I'm going to take a last.
Yeah, so, I honestly, I think that's probably a great sum up of everything we've been talking about here. We've been talking a lot about Louis L'Amour being, a trailblazer in various ways, audiobooks. Most of the caricatures he's created, we still use to this, the character archetypes that we still use to this day. But one of the things I wanted to bring up that is fascinating, and for the writers out there, this is going to probably mean more than to fans, but it's fascinating for us. Before Louis L'Amour, if you wanted to publish a lot of books in a year, you had to have several different publishers. He actually had two to start off with, which was Gold Medal and then Bantam Books. And it was actually Bantam who, in 1960, decided that they would offer him a short, exclusive contract to produce 3 to 4 books a year. That he actually then started to produce only for one company, and now we have the Baldaccis and such who create, tons of books a year, all published by the same publisher. But it was believed before that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go to multiple publishers and stuff like that.
So
Bantam was
revolutionary and in genre.
Trailblazer.
The guy was a trailblazer in many, many, many ways.
And I'm going to end it with a quote by him. And I think as we've been talking about larger-than-life characters, you've heard multiple different ways of approach. There's no one way to do anything out there. And I think this kind of just sums up everything we learned in writing. There will come a time when you believe everything is finished. That will be the beginning.
Ominous.
And on that note, have a great week writing. Tune in next week for yet another interesting topic in the writing industry. Thank you for listening.
The world is over.
So a larger-than-life character means that you write someone who in real life would either get killed or go to jail.
Not necessarily. This would just be terribly conflicted mentally and have a terrible social life.
No,
Did you know that Right Pack Radio has an international audience? How would you like to reach that audience in regards to your books, your book services, your author services, or more? Go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com and look under advertising for more information. If you don't have a script, that's not a problem. We will be happy to work with you. Once again, go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com for more information.
The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her.